What's going on, y'all? It's Cone back here again today with another video, and today I want to talk for a little bit about Ben Simmons. Unfortunately, as I'm sure a lot of you have heard, Ben Simmons' second year with the Brooklyn Nets has been cut short. He's had this back nerve issue that's been plaguing him for the past few seasons, really ever since he first got traded over to Brooklyn, and this year it's popped up again. It's led to him only playing 15 games on the season. Recently he's been sitting out, and now we've got a report from Shams that he underwent surgery, and unfortunately his season is actually over. I hope this surgery is one that can get him healthy to play for next season. We can get a bit of a bounce back next year, but that was kind of my hope going into this season. We heard a lot of reports coming into the year that this could be a bit of a Ben Simmons renaissance season. People were saying this was the healthiest they've seen him look in a while, and that was coming from guys on the Nets staff, other players on the team, just voices around the basketball world. And because I want to see him succeed and get back to the level he was in the past, and just believing a lot of the rumors, I guess, I bought fully into the Ben Simmons hype. I was one of the people that said this was going to be the season that Ben Simmons refound his form a little bit. Now, I didn't think he was going to be the all-NBA, all-star depoy level guy he was in the past, but I thought he could go out there and be an impactful player and just play a decent number of minutes in games, helping the Brooklyn Nets be a little bit better than they would be without him. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case. Like I said, only showed up in 15 contests and only played 24 minutes per game when he played. In those games, the numbers don't jump off the stat sheet: 6.1 points per game at 7.9 rebounds and 5.7 dimes, but he was decently productive. Like, those numbers aren't terrible by any means, especially for a guy that's been continuously dealing with back injuries, and I think his impact went beyond that as well. When Ben Simmons was out there, the defense looked noticeably better. He was kind of refining his form a little bit on that end. Offensively, he was great in transition, got them playing with a nice fluidity that we really haven't seen from the Brooklyn Nets much at all this season. I feel like he was genuinely a positively impactful player when he could actually stay on the court, but like the past few seasons, just wasn't out there very much. Now, leading back to when he was first traded to Brooklyn, he's only played 57 games with the franchise in 2 seasons plus some change after the deadline in 2022. Of course, the hope with this surgery is that he can buck that trend in next season. He gets back to being somewhat reliable when it comes to staying on the court, but I just don't know if this is going anywhere. I know back issues are really persistent, and there's been a lot of times in the past where athletes or just people in the general public have tried to push through back injuries, and it's reached a point where they're forced to retire or just stop doing whatever they do. I really hope that's not the case with Ben Simmons, and I hope he gets back to just being a productive player, because if we look back to when he was a Sixer, he was on a legitimate Hall of Fame path. And you might think I'm over-exaggerating. I'm not. If we take a look at the accolades and what he was doing, it felt inevitable that one day Ben Simmons would be one of the best players in the world and probably end up enshrined in the Hall of Fame. It started off with him winning Rookie of the Year in 2018, a season where there was that whole debate between him and Donovan Mitchell, is Ben Simmons an actual rookie, which I've always found that discourse ridiculous because by definition, he is a rookie. He spent all of the previous season rehabbing from a foot injury and was still able to come back and be one of the best young players in the league that season. So very much earned the Rookie of the Year award and put up some really good numbers. He was giving them right around 16 points per game, giving them 8 boards, 8 dimes, 1.7 steals. He was dynamic as a defender, a really fun transition player, brought some super interesting size to the Sixers as a 6'10" point guard. He was a really intriguing player. And over the next few years, he would emerge as one of the brightest young stars in the league, and he and Embiid would combine for one of the brightest young duos in the entire association. Ben Simmons himself would rack up a bunch of accolades over the next few years. He became an All-Star by year 2, an All-NBA player by year 3, as well as All-Defense. He finished second in depoy voting in year 4 of his career, as well as top 12 in MVP voting that same season. By age 24, just 4 years into his career, Simmons had 3 All-Star appearances, an All-NBA selection, 2 All-Defensive selections, a Rookie of the Year, and a steal title. That's a ridiculous amount of accolades to rack up in your first few years in the association. And he was still really young. It felt like he was getting better and better. The playmaking was continuing to improve. He was one of the best playmakers in the league. The defense was definitely getting better. He was locked down on that end, one of the most exciting defenders in the entire NBA, with ridiculous versatility because of his foot speed, his size, his length, his IQ on that end. He just knew how to defend at the highest level, and it felt like he could rack up maybe a depoy or 2, even maybe more than that, some all-defensive teams, all-star appearances, all-NBA selections. He was truly on a Hall of Fame trajectory, or at least it felt like that at the time. In his best season, Simmons put up 16.4 points per game, 7.8 rebounds, and 8 assists to go with 2.1 steals, which was the year that he led the league, while shooting 58% from the field. He was nearly a walking triple-double, a lockdown defender, and there were a lot of people saying that he was the brightest young star in the entire league. There was this Colin Cowherd video where he either said he would build around Simmons over anybody else, or I think he ranked him like top 5 in the NBA as a player at that point. Regardless, the hype was real. There were a couple of times where the Sixers would disappoint, and people would say they should go ahead and break this duo of Embiid and Ben Simmons up, and they should build around Ben Simmons. That was kind of a pretty prevalent opinion at that point. Obviously, looking back, that was crazy because Embiid has become a 36 point per game dominant big man, but it was not super surprising when you take a look at what Simmons could do out there as, again, a 6'10 point guard. Personally, I always leaned Embiid a little bit over Ben Simmons, but my official stance was, why would you break up this duo? They're both incredible young players, all-star, all-NBA level guys. Sure, they've disappointed in the playoffs a couple of times, but there's still so many years for them to play together, so much room for them to grow. They both felt like they had ridiculously high ceilings, like they could be some of the best players in the world. Why would you split up that pairing? I always felt like it was premature to talk about that, and it was kind of insane to even consider that, and it didn't seem like the Sixers were legitimately thinking about breaking up Ben Simmons and Embiid, at least not until Game 7 in 2021 against the Atlanta Hawks. This game has become pretty infamous for Sixers fans and NBA fans alike, specifically because of the Ben Simmons moment. It was late in the game, the Sixers were trying to battle with the Hawks in a Game 7 in Philadelphia. Ben Simmons had a wide open layup or a dunk that he could take over Trae Young, but rather than shooting it, he passed over to Matisse Thybulle, who ended up getting fouled. I think he split the free throws if I remember correctly, but it was a moment where Ben Simmons had clearly lost a lot of confidence, and he was a player that had already been ridiculed by a lot of people throughout that season for refusing to shoot threes, for refusing to expand his offensive game, and kind of taking a back seat. There was also the whole thing that he couldn't really shoot free throws. I remember there were all these videos of fans in the crowd trying to pump him up when he made one. They would cheer him on like crazy. There was that one Sixers fan who was, imitating the motion of shooting a free throw in the crowd, trying to be like, hey, this is how you do it. You can do it. It was just kind of a mess of a playoff run for Ben Simmons and the Sixers, and one that ended really prematurely. They were the number 1 overall seed. It felt like a given, at least to me, that they would beat the Atlanta Hawks, but they ended up falling in that Game 7, and that Ben Simmons moment in particular is burned into the minds of a lot of people when you think about the end of Simmons as a Sixer. Fun fact, I was actually in that building. I was there for Game 7. My brother is a big-time Sixers fan. I was at a birthday party with a friend when Game 6 was going on. The Sixers won, and my brother called me up and said, hey, would you want to go with me to Philadelphia in the next couple of days? Because we live on the East Coast, so it was only a few-hour drive. He's like, do you want to go see Game 7 with me? And I'm like, sure, that sounds great. I would love to go see that. Unfortunately, it was not a great time for him or many of the other Sixers fans there, and I remember walking out of that building and thinking to myself, I absolutely just watched the last game that Ben Simmons will ever play as a Sixer. I remember when he passed up that shot, the boos just rained down from the crowd, and as I was leaving the arena, there were people wearing Ben Simmons jerseys that were ripping them off themselves in half, throwing them in the trash. There was chants of trade Ben Simmons, Simmons sucks. Everything like that. It was chaotic. I had never seen anything like it, and I don't think I ever will again. I remember going back to my hotel room, recording a recap video after that, which I'm pretty sure I titled, This is the End of the Ben Simmons Era in Philly, or It's Time for the Sixers to Trade Ben Simmons, something like that, because in that moment, the writing was on the wall that Ben Simmons was coming to his end as a Sixer, but what I didn't realize at the time was it was also the end of Ben Simmons as the all-star level player that we knew him as. Of course, the next season, he would hold out from the Sixers, demanding a trade until eventually was dealt to Brooklyn at the deadline in exchange for James Harden. He wouldn't play for Brooklyn that season either because of that back injury, the one that is still kind of plaguing him to this day, and has prevented him from reaching the level that he was at in that last Sixers season. It's been a rapid decline. Like that Ben Simmons Game 7 Hawks moment was less than 3 full years ago. We haven't even reached the 3-year anniversary of when that happened, and at the same time, it feels like a decade has passed since that moment. It's just unfortunate how quickly Ben Simmons has gone from one of the brightest young stars in the league to a guy that we don't really know how much he's going to play in the rest of his career. He reminds me a lot of Brandon Roy. If you take a look at their accolades, they're pretty similar. Brandon Roy, before he ended up retiring, finished with 3 All-Stars, 2 All-NBAs, and a Rookie of the Year. Again, pretty similar to Ben Simmons, and he would end up retiring at 27 years old, tried to make a comeback at 28, and re-retired due to injury. Ben Simmons, at the moment where we're talking about him, is also 27 years old, and there are a lot of people on the internet that are saying maybe he should just consider retiring, and that would be really unfortunate. I still hold out hope that somehow Ben Simmons will get anywhere close to his form that he had in the past, but at the same time, I do know that back injuries are really disabilitating. Like, he has not been able to play consistently for a while up to this point, and I'm sure it's got to be exhausting. If he's dealing with the discomfort and he decides that the best course of action for him is to retire, that's completely understandable. As much as it would really suck, he's got to do what's best for him. So this whole situation going on has just had me think a lot about where Ben Simmons was at one point, how exciting he was to watch, how much potential felt like was there, how he was on a Hall of Fame trajectory, and now it genuinely feels like retirement could be on the table for him in the next few years. I'm really rooting for Ben Simmons. I want to see him go out there and prove everybody wrong, all the doubters, the people saying that he'll never be a good player again. I want to see him do that, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed that this back surgery gets him relatively healthy and he can go out there and just be a productive player again that can stay on the court. I'm not saying he has to be an all-star again, an all-NBA level player again, a D-play level player ever again. I just hope he's actually able to stay out there and play basketball and do what I assume he loves to do. Like, this felt like it was going to be a Hall of Fame career for him, and it's just been completely derailed by these injuries. It's really unfortunate. Fingers crossed that he's able to stay healthy going forward, and that next year is the true bounce back for Ben Simmons. I also just want to remind you how good he was in making this video. I rewatched a lot of Ben Simmons highlights. He was such a special player. I completely understand why all the hype was around him. There were even some people saying he was like the next LeBron of some kind. Some people called him the Prince, you know, as in reference to LeBron James being the king. I was never quite that high, but the hype was real. He was really, really good. And yeah, I appreciate y'all watching. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. Comment down below, what was your viewpoint on Ben Simmons earlier in his career? Do you think if the injuries didn't hit, he could have been a Hall of Fame level player? I still do believe he was on that trajectory. Hopefully somehow he's able to recapture some of that magic. We'll have to wait and see for now. But I appreciate y'all watching. I'll see y'all later. Real one, say it back.